So you can think of like customer service workers, right? What if we can use AI to basically give them a whole bunch of experience before their first day on the job? Because now they can have these kind of interactions, right, that they would have already because the AI can get trained on existing or real interactions. And now they can have them.
Let's hear from the experts about how artificial intelligence is transforming the world of business. I'm Katie Gaertner, and this is Unsupervised. Hello, Business Badgers. Today, I'm sitting with Jirs Meuris. He's a professor in the Department of Management and Human Resources here at the Wisconsin School of Business. Jirs earned his PhD from the University of Pittsburgh in Organizational Behavior and Human Resources Management. His work examines how economic and demographic disparities in the workplace affect organizational outcomes. So Jirs, let's talk about management, human resources, and AI.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's start out with what even is management and human resources? Why is it a major here at the business school?
So I think the best way to describe what HRM is that the function tries to help organizations get the most out of their people and at the same time also have people get the most out of their workplace. And this can be kind of the day-to-day things, making sure everyone gets their paycheck, answering any questions about benefits, all those kinds of things, but also strategic decision-making, think about workforce planning, right? It's like, what are the future needs of the company? What is our turnover rate? So what positions will we have to fill in the future? And so I think it's both these day-to-day things as well as the strategic side that kind of defines people's jobs in HR.
So with that, how do you see AI being used in management and human resources?
Yeah, and so, it's interesting, or it's an interesting time to kind of think about this because there's a lot of experimentation. And I think that's true across any kind of jobs and fields where people are trying to figure out, like, where is the potential of this? I think there's three kind of broad areas. One is think about these routine tasks, these day-to-day things that just take up time. And I think a lot of companies are starting to think of how can we use AI to maybe take some of that load off of our HR function so that they can focus on some of the strategic things a bit more. A good example would be, for example, in benefits, giving every employee personalized benefit recommendations, right? Something changes in your family. What is the best configuration of health insurance, retirement, all these kinds of things, using AI rather than having people in HR necessarily spending a lot of time on that. Answering questions, responding to emails, right? You have these frequently asked questions. Well, can you have AI kind of build that up? Yeah. So it's these day-to-day things that HR professionals do that I think that they're trying to include AI to have professionals spend less time on that. Yeah. So I think that's one area. Then the second is around strategic decision-making, particularly when it comes to data and data analytics. I think AI is lowering the barrier for a lot of companies, particularly smaller companies who don't just have a massive amount of people who work in data analytics, and it's lowering the barrier to kind of more advanced analytics, thinking about turnover, for example, trying to predict like who's actually leaving, why are people leaving, and doing these more advanced analytics on that usually only was reserved for companies either who had a lot of people to do these, who had these skills, or who could hire McKinsey to come in and actually do that, right? Yeah. But now these kind of these mid-sized, smaller companies get access to that because of AI. You can think about managing performance. We need to increase or try to optimize performance in our workplace. Well, can we develop personalized training and development programs for every employee, right? Depending on what they're doing, what they're working on, what their tasks are at that moment, that we can think about that. And then I think the third area, which is a little bit more controversial, is what I call managing people through AI. So think Uber, for example. Who's your manager? Well, it's the AI, it's the computer, it's the app, right? And so I think that's right now, that's a little bit more reserved for these kinds of companies like Uber, those kind of things, getting managed through the app, through the computer. But, you could imagine that maybe companies are going to start experimenting with that as well. As like, how can we manage our employees using kind of these AI functions, which is a little bit more controversial, I think. But it's another area that I see kind of AI starting to be used in HR.
Oh, okay. That's exciting. What kind of transformative or exciting developments in AI are you excited about in the MHR space?
Yeah, one of the things that I think is most interesting, and that I think is actually also interesting for any students who are interested in entrepreneurship, right? Trying to think of like what are gaps in the market. I think is around training and development. So a lot of advances were made in training and development when simulations became more prevalent. VR, right, is another kind of technological advance that really was being integrated in training and development. And I think AI is going to start becoming a part of that too. It's like, how do we actually train people to do jobs? So you can think of like customer service workers, right? What if we can use AI to basically give them a whole bunch of experience before their first day on the job? Because now they can have these kind of interactions, right, that they would have already because the AI can get trained on existing or real interactions. And now they can have them. Like beforehand, you can train customer service workers up to so that when they start, they actually already have real experience. You can also think about training existing employees, right? What are those new problems, new challenges that these workers are dealing with? AI is going to kind of build scenarios around that, and now you can train existing employees. It also is going to help with hiring. So one of the methods that can be used for hiring is realistic job reviews. So we want to hire you. We're going to put you in that job for maybe an hour, 2 hours, maybe a day, and then just see, is the good fit for you? Maybe you can self-select out if you think, okay, this isn't really for me. But the problem is it's costly, right? Now you have to put every person through that. And it's risky because you can't do that for every job, because you can't be like, hey, go and be a firefighter, right? You kind of need training and, and there's liability in those. AI may help a little bit with that, particularly if we combine VR, AI. I saw a VR kind of training and development simulation that was developed for lifeguards, right? And it's like you basically put in as a lifeguard, and you have to watch the pool and you have to look for signs of drowning. And so you literally have to look around and see and try to identify, is there a sign of drowning while everyone's just swimming around? And so it really puts you in that situation that you can think about integrating AI into that as well, to develop different scenarios, to have interactions with people that you would in that job. And it's a real day in the life of a lifeguard, right? And then you can see like, okay, is this person kind of a good fit for this? If they have a certification, okay, does the certification mean something when they actually go and do the job, right? And so I think that's a really cool area to think about how AI can be integrated. And as I mentioned, it's also for people who want to develop their own business, develop their own software. I think there's a lot of jobs where those tools could be developed for, but just don't exist yet.
So maybe you can give me some concrete examples of companies that are adopting AI in the context of management and human resources.
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned, data analytics, it's a big area where AI is I think there's some experimentation, but there, I think it's more concretely being integrated. So McKinsey, for example, has kind of this turnover model that they developed to try to predict turnover within companies that they consult for. And that's an area where AI is being used to basically take all the data that a company might have and try to figure out what's the pattern in here that might explain why some people are leaving, some are not, and try to help predict future turnover for that workforce planning. So I think that's one example where I think it's a bit more concrete on the data analytics, where they're not necessarily in that experimental phase anymore. I think some other areas is what I mentioned with the frequently asked questions, right? Where they're kind of like companies are trying to develop this living, breathing, frequently asked questions based upon email data, rather than just a person having to sit there, or like a ticketing system necessarily, where AI can develop this FAQ and people can just get the answers that they're looking for and almost predict what answer or what question you're going to ask before you're asking it, right? And so I think that's another area within HR where companies are trying to experiment, and where there's been some developments in doing that. I think the other area where AI, and this may be a little bit more indirectly, is that AI policies, right? And the challenge for HR a little bit is that you have to be competent in how AI is used in every single area in the company, because the way I look at it as in HR, you are the AI risk manager for the company of how people are actually using these things. You have to manage that. You have to think about opportunities as well as what are the liabilities, like what can go wrong, like how should people use this. And so I think in terms of kind of incorporating AI and how it impacts HR, well, you have to be competent in AI in every single job within the company, or at least knowledgeable to some extent, because that helps you craft those AI use policies. And that's another way that businesses are kind of thinking about and trying to adapt to AI. AI is developing these policies, but it's really difficult, especially as that technology is advancing so quickly. We think that because AI is becoming a bigger part of work, that that's kind of separate from people, but I think they're so blended, right? And there's value in the AI tools, and there's also still value in people and what people bring to the workplace, what people bring to the table. And so you really have to understand the combination of the two.
All right. So given that we know how important it is, what skills do you think are important for students looking to enter the human resources and management world in the next few years? What skills do you see them needing to develop?
I think it's just AI competency, right? Understanding kind of how does it work? What are the touch points with different jobs? And some of that might depend a little bit about the industry you want to go to. So say you want to go and do HR in finance and investment banking. Well, how does AI affect trading, IPOs, risk management, right? Because you are the risk management officer when it comes to AI, right? So it's like developing that competency around like, what are these tools? What are the opportunities? I think across a lot of different domains, and particularly the industries that you might be interested in going into. And then I think there is a AI competency when it comes to HR. How can we improve this function using these tools? And that's the frequently asked questions. That's how can this help training and development, those kinds of things, and trying to keep up with the innovations, which is difficult right now because there's just a lot of things coming out, and it's not always clear like where the opportunity is, like what might be the problems with it, but trying to keep up with that, developing some very core AI use, personal use skills, I think are also important. So, there's a lot that goes into like, what prompts do you use when you actually use these tools, right? And so developing those capabilities, I think, are going to help you in the future. And I think being in school, I will always say that when you're in a school or an educational setting, it's easier to develop those than if you have to go back.
All right. One more question. if you could invent an AI or robotic tool that would offload something for you that you would never have to do again, what bot or AI tool would you create?
This would be the easiest question, driving.
Oh.
So I'm patiently waiting on Elon Musk to develop his robo-taxis. So I'm partially blind.
Okay.
And so driving has always been very difficult for me. And so if there's one thing I would never have to do again in my life, it would be driving. And so hopefully one day I won't have to. But I think it's this is probably true for a lot of people. It's like, pick the one thing you really don't like doing in your day-to-day life, right? And it's like, can somebody else please do this, or can a robot please do this for me? And and I think for a lot of people that probably is like, I don't like cooking, so I don't want to do that. Yep. So for me, it's my driving, and I'm hopeful that I don't have to wait till I'm 80 for that robo-taxi.
Well, they're working on it. I know they are. So I think your dream might come true in our lifetime.
It's not an unrealistic.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jirs. I've learned so much from sitting with you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and to my students about AI in management and human resources.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Unsupervised is brought to you by the Wisconsin School of Business. It's written and hosted by Katie Gaertner, with sound editing and production by Derek Schneider and Billy Kardaj.